I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. This is a poem that's split into 4 stanzas, all following the same rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, C. And each stanza follows this rhyme scheme. It's also consistently iambic tetrameter throughout, as we can see. I wandered lonely as a cloud. If we box them all up, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just double check another line. So we say beside the lake, beneath the trees. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it goes throughout the whole poem in this kind of iambic tetrameter. Iam as it's unstressed, stressed, and there's 4 groups of that per line, which makes it iambic tetrameter. Looking at the word choices that we see throughout, it uses the word choice of wandered. I wandered lonely as a cloud. The idea of wandering very much gives the idea that the speaker is lost. Lost whether it be in life, lost in his own thoughts, lost when wandering, he's walking without any specific destination in mind. He goes on to tell us that he's lonely as a cloud, and he uses this simile here, as a cloud, to really convey that idea that he's comparing himself to being a cloud in the vast expansive blue sky. He is a single solitary cloud. And he tells us that he's wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. So he floats on high over valleys and hills. And he imagines that as this cloud, all of a sudden he sees a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Now it's quite important here, this idea, a host of golden daffodils. There's 2 reasons for this. Host also means crowd. It's the same meaning. But what we usually hear about is a host of angels. So people who are reading this poem, when they see a host of golden daffodils, they would instantly also associate it with a host of angels as well, a group of angels. And this is further emphasised when he uses the word golden to describe them. It's not yellow, it's golden, which really gives it heavenly, regal, very stately kind of imagery behind it. It's golden daffodils. It tells us that they were all beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Fluttering and dancing in the breeze. He uses personification here. And the personification is used just to try and give him human qualities and behaviours, to try and bring these to life. He was wandering lonely, and all of a sudden he saw these beautiful, majestic, golden, almost like angels dancing and fluttering in the breeze. This word fluttering, we usually talk about butterflies or perhaps even angels fluttering. So this word choice of fluttering further emphasises this heavenly idea of the angels. We then get taken on to the second stanza, and he tells us that this crowd of daffodils were actually, he uses another simile, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. These ideas of stars, shining, twinkling, Milky Way, all these ideas again further emphasize this link to heaven and the daffodils being otherworldly, almost, out of this world, angelic, angel-like. And this is really emphasised in this idea. The idea as well that they're continuous as the stars that shine give us this idea that there are thousands upon thousands of them. If you look at pictures of the Milky Way, it's great big clusters, great big strip, a cluster, lots and lots of stars tightly packed together. And he's simply making it, again, the daffodils seem like these stars. Again, these stars you would say were in heaven, so it backs up that link. He tells us that they stretched in a never-ending line, again continuing that idea of how many there were, along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, which again is a huge number. It's hyperbole what he uses there. Exaggeration for dramatic effect. Tells us 10,000 he saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. And he goes on again, and he's continuing this image, the personification of the daffodils dancing. And he tells us that they were tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Sprightly just means really joyful and happy, but again, the word sprightly can give us images of a sprite. And a sprite is a bit like a fairy or an angel. It has supernatural kind of properties and beliefs about it. So the idea that these daffodils are tossing their heads in sprightly dance, again, instantly links it to angels or fairies or certainly otherworldly. He's really talking about nature, but on a different level. Just like he's now a cloud, he's saying that these daffodils are almost angelic. They're almost like angels. As we move on to the third stanza, he tells us that the waves beneath them in this lake, the waves beneath the daffodils, they danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. So it almost gives an impression as if that the waves, the lake that the daffodils are growing beside, it almost gives an impression that they were having like a dance-off almost, if you like, a competition in dancing. But it instantly tells us that the daffodils they outperformed the sparkling waves in glee. They outperformed them purely down to the happiness that they seemed to be exuding, the happiness the effect of happiness they seemed to be transmitting. And again, this word sparkling again, furthermore emphasizes that idea of it being angelic and of it being up in heaven. He instantly tells us, he refers to himself, the poet here, and says, a poet could not but be gay. A poet could be nothing but happy in such joyful and happy and exciting company. So he's simply saying that as a poet, he could not be happier than to see all these daffodils dancing and tossing their heads and everything like that. He tells us, I gazed. And gazed, he emphasizes his gaze, how much he was staring at them. He gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. He's telling us that when he was looking at them, as he was looking at them, of course he appreciated how beautiful they were, but it wasn't really until later that he fully appreciated the beauty of the daffodils and how it made him feel. And then it tells us in the final stanza, it instantly takes us into his living room. We've gone from being outside, surrounded in nature, where at one moment he was wondering and perhaps not very happy, but upon seeing all of the beautiful nature and the daffodils, he's become very, very happy. He's now back on his couch, on his sofa, and he's saying that he lies there in vacant or in pensive mood. So he's saying that whenever he's lying there, whether he be in vacant, which means not occupied, completely blank, not thinking, when he's in that kind of mood, vacant, or in pensive, which means to really concentrate and think a lot, really think hard about something, whenever he's lying on his couch, in either of those moods, he tells us that they flash upon that inward eye. And that inward eye, again, it almost has it does have religious connotations, and it has a spiritual vision, it almost suggests. It suggests that in the inward eye of the speaker, of the poet, it's almost like a spiritual vision that he's able to create. And he's able to connect with that, and it's very much the daffodils, it's this image of the daffodils which links with his spirituality and the spiritual side of him. And he tells us that this is the bliss of solitude. It's his beauty, which is really the perfectness of being alone. And he tells us that then, although he's alone, his heart, again, a heart which obviously you love with and which has emotion and everything like that, his heart with pleasure, it fills up. So when he's lying along his couch in his living room, and he's either thinking loads or he's not thinking a lot, no matter what, all of a sudden in his head he gets this beautiful picture of the daffodils. And this is what it tells us his heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Not only the daffodils dancing, his heart is as well. And this is really what it all comes to be about. At one moment he was lonely, he was wandering around with no aim in life, no real thought, perhaps depressed, and all of a sudden these beautiful, beautiful daffodils have caught his attention. He compares them to almost being angelic. He uses a lot of religious and angelic, angel-like imagery. We have a host of golden daffodils he talks about sparkling. He talks about all the sort of imagery which really puts really colourful, bright, heavenly images in our head. he sees all these and his heart instantly he's happy with, and he feels full of inspiration. And it goes on to say that he obviously tells us that whilst he's seeing all this at the time, whilst he was looking at them, perhaps he didn't appreciate them enough. But now, when he's back home in his house, lying across his sofa, all of a sudden his imagination comes to life. He remembers the beauty of the daffodils, and any kind of loneliness or sadness is instantly evaporated, is instantly improved because of this thought alone.